obviously I don't want to repeat a lot of things we have said, but we'll start with the sifa, the description of the sitting for the final tashahud. So there are three possibilities of sitting. One which happens between two sajda every rak'ah. One is a sitting in Salah for tashahud which has more than one tashahud. So other than Fajr, let's say every Fard Salah will have two tashahud, one after two rakats and one after the last rakah. So one sitting is the sitting between the sajdas. One sitting is the first tashahud when there are two tashahuds. And one sitting is the final tashahud. We are talking about final tashahud and we'll continue talking about that. Okay. As for sitting between the two sajdas, we spent a lot of time last week on it. Now, in the Hanafi madhab, I explained last week that there are two types of sittings. One is iftirash, or the person is called muftarish, and one is called tawarruk, which is a person is called mutawarrik, or mutawarrikan, meaning so iftirash is when you sit with your left foot, you sit where the buttocks are on the left foot and it is sideways, and the right foot is vertical. The bottom of the foot, the toes are facing the qibla. This is called iftirash. And tawarruk means when you don't sit on the left foot, rather your buttocks on the floor and your left foot is ahead of you or on the side of you ahead of your buttocks, and the right leg is still vertical. Now Ahnaf, their madhab is very easy. They do iftirash for men in every sitting, whether it be between sajdas, whether it be in the first tashahud or the final tashahud. It is always iftirash. So this is for Ahnaf, but only for men. Other madhahib, other than Ahnaf, in general, their ruling is there is no difference between the salah of a man and woman. There is no difference between the salah of a man and a woman, except minute details may be different. But in general, salah is all same for men and women. Ahnaf we've already discussed in the previous lessons. I went through 10 major differences between men and women. One of the difference is the sitting of women for Ahnaf is always tawarruk, and sitting of men is always iftirash. These wordings are confusing anyone? Muftarish or tawarruk and iftirash is okay for someone, or do you want me to explain? The way you sit in salah, because I know how you sit, that would be this is iftirash. And the way if you were not to sit on your left foot but to sit on that sitting would be tawarruk. Okay. And there is proof for all of that. It is just where madhahib thinks one may be more preferred for another reason than the other madhab. Okay. The hadith they use is from Wa'il bin Hujr. He said, I went to Medina to look at the salah of Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. This Sahabi traveled and he stayed a time in Medina, and his reason for travel was that he wanted to see how Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam prays. So in his hadith, then he comes to the bit where he says, and the Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam jalasa, yani for tashahud, he sat down, iftarasha rijlahu al-yusra wa wada'a yadahu al-yusra ala fakhidhi. So he put his his left foot down and he sat on it. And then later on in the hadith he says, وَنَسَبَ رِجْلَهُ الْيُمْنَى, and he made the right foot stand. Nasab means, like I explained, where the bottom, the part of the toes, they will be facing the Qibla, and the other part is standing upright, the foot, like you see in Salah normally. Okay. One of hadith which Ahnaf use, and because of that they say this is the way Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam said, this is the way they choose. It's a good hadith. All hadith in this bab mainly are sound hadith. This is in Tirmidhi, Hasan. And hadith of Bukhari as well. We discussed last lesson from Abu Humayd al-Sa'di. Some people say Abu Hamid. Abu Humayd al-Sa'di. He has a very famous hadith in Sifatul Salat al-Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. And in that hadith also he said, فَافْتَرَشَ رِجْلَهُ الْيُسْرَى وَأَقْبَلَ بِصَدْرِ الْيُمْنَى عَلَى قِبْلَتِهِ. So he said he sat on his left foot and his right foot, the sadr of it, the toes were facing the Qibla. Sat on his left foot and turned the toes of the right foot towards the Qibla. This is the hadith of Abu Humayd al-Sa'di. These ahadith, some of the hadith in this bab of Salah are very important, and they come again and again. Sifatul Salah, Abu Humayd, and Al-Musi'u fi Salatihi, that hadith, it will keep coming back from beginning. It has come I don't know how many times. They're very important hadith. So this is mainly the men's sitting for Tashahud al-Akhir for Ahnaf. Okay. Maliki view is that tawarruk should be done in all sitting of Salah. So where Ahnaf said if iftirash should be for all sitting of Salah for men, Malikis, other madhab, they don't differentiate between men and women. So they said tawarruk should be for all sittings in Salah, meaning whether it's between two sajdas, whether it's the first tashahud or the last tashahud, regardless, it should be tawarruk. And is because hadith of Imam Malik, he also mentioned in his Muwatta from Abdullah bin Umar, Abdullah bin Umar, his son, he said that Abdullah bin Umar only used to sit in tawarruk in all his sittings in Salah. They took that hadith and they based their, they preferred that hadith over others. Imam Malik's madhab is that all men, women, they sit in tawarruk all the time. And I've already told you, Hanafis, they take the hadith and they say for women, they sit in tawarruk all the time. They believe it's more astar, this has more satar, this is more modest for women to sit in this position than in this position that men sit. Okay? And Imam Tahawi, he has mentioned that it is sunnah for women to sit in that way, tawarruk. So who is left? Hanbali madhab is left and Shafi. Hanbali and Shafi madhabs, like last week you would have noticed, the ahkam we covered for tashahud, almost same, they're not very different, right? Now, Hanbali madhab is near Shafi madhab. The Shafi'i madhab is not much different, but the Hanbali madhab says the last sitting, which is the sitting with salam, yeah, the final sitting in salah. All salahs which has two sittings, so they differentiate. All salahs that have two sittings, the final one should be tawarruk. So if we look at the fard salah, which salah do we discount from that rule? They said, Fajr. So they're not talking about Fajr. They say the last sitting for every salah which has two tashahud should be done in tawarruk. And how they got that? Because if you look at the hadith of Abu Humayd al-Sa'di, the two rakats in which the salah ends, basically. أخر رجله اليسرى وقعد على شقه متوركا ثم سلم. Now Abu Humayd, he explained the salah of Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam in very much detail. And then the wordings is amazing. He said, when Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam was in the part, the two rakats which ends the salah, and he sat down, sat down and he explained which is the way of tawarruk. So the Hanabila say, because he specified it, he specified that when he was in the sitting, which is the final sitting, he sat in that way. And he didn't explain tawarruk in the earlier part of the hadith. So they said, because, and that hadith is one of the most authentic hadith and very famous hadith on the matter. So they said, when there are 4 rakats, the final sitting will be in that way. And there is plenty of proof for iftirash. So when there is not 4 rakat, or sitting after 2 rakats in general, it is the way of iftirash. Have I lost you, or am I? Okay, so Hanbali say, where Ahnaf say, all sitting for men is iftirash way. Yeah? All sitting for women is tawarruk. Maliki said, all men and women all the time sit in tawarruk. Hanbalis, they separated. They said, because of the wordings of the hadith, and we have said that again and again and again, the Hanbalis, they look at the wording, the zahir of the hadith and the wording very carefully. This becomes very important part of the madhab. Now, they said because of the way he said it, and he specifically mentioned, he specified the last sitting in the way he did, so it's a proof that he differentiated the final sitting from other sitting. But this proof is only available for a salah which has 4 rakats. So they said, well, if salah has 2 tashahud, then the final one will be like that. Other than that, all sitting, whether it's between the sajda or the final sitting of fajr or after 2 rakats. The same rule applies in sunnah and nawafil as well if it's more than 2 rakats. Okay? They say they will all be the iftirash way, other than the fact the final sitting, when there are 2 sittings in salah, it will be tawarruk. Okay. And the Shafi'is, they have the same madhab as Hanabila, that the final sitting has to be tawarruk, but they didn't differentiate between Fajr and the others. They say that whatever is the final sitting. Well, Hanbali said, if there are 2 sittings, the final will be tawarruk, mutawarrikan. But the Shafi said, no, the final sitting, whether it's 2 rakats or whatever, the final sitting will be tawarruk. That's what they took from the hadith. I've lost you? You with me or not? Okay. So there's not much difference. The same ruling for Shafi and Hanbali, other than the fact Hanbalis are very specific in the way that there must be 2 sittings in the salah for tashahud, then the final one would be like that. Well, Shafi says every final sitting, regardless 2 sittings or 1 sitting, the final sitting will be like that. So that means they include the fajr and 2 rakats of sunnah or any nafil. Yeah?